Monitoring is an important part of species conservation programs. Monitoring the threatened woodland boreal caribou is thus a critical part of conserving the species on the Canadian landscape. As with most monitoring programs, monitoring of boreal caribou takes place in 4 broad steps: planning, program execution, determining results, and sharing of results. Let's briefly dive into each of those steps. The first part of planning is to gather all the key players at the table and agree on goals and objectives for the monitoring program. The Indigenous Knowledge Circle of the NBCKC recommends meaningful collaboration with Indigenous knowledge holders. Engage frequently and ensure your monitoring plan is sensitive to changing values, priorities, and rights. The second part of planning is to co-develop monitoring goals, select indicators or metrics, and select monitoring methods. This should be done with all of the key players identified in the first step. Next come data collection and analysis, and subsequently, once the data have been reviewed, results can be determined. These results should then be shared with all the key players identified at the start of the program, and key players should in turn be able to communicate these results to their communities and organizations. Once the monitoring program is complete, new goals should be identified and the cycle begins again. So now that you know the main steps that go into doing monitoring work, how do you choose which monitoring method to use in your area? I welcome you to the Boreal Caribou Monitoring Toolkit. It is worth noting before expanding any sub-branches of the toolkit tree that Indigenous ways of knowing are directly connected to the core of the toolkit and do inform every aspect of the toolkit's development. The first document produced as a part of the Boreal Caribou Monitoring Toolkit was Part 1, Perspectives on Monitoring. This report was aimed at understanding the current state of monitoring across the country and highlighting concerns expressed by individuals and organizations. A summary of the Perspectives report was also produced as a collaborative effort between Nature United and the National Boreal Caribou Knowledge Consortium. The next section of the toolkit is a decision tree. The decision tree will serve to help users select the monitoring methods that are most suitable for their program or project by asking a series of questions related to ethics, resources, and logistical complexity. Based on the answers selected by the user, the decision tree will narrow down the list of possible field methods to only those which fit the needs of the user. The first question which will be asked by the decision tree is, do you already have data or are you looking to acquire data? Presuming the user does not currently have data to analyze, the user will begin by following the Data or Evidence Gathering branch of the toolkit. Within this section of the toolkit, there are a few subsections. The first, What Can Be Monitored, will feature a bilingual glossary of monitoring methods. The second section, Connecting Parameters and Field Methods, feature 2 method suitability tables. Method Suitability Table 1 was created to provide an overview of the boreal caribou population parameters which can be measured by the different field methods. The second table was created to provide an overview of the suitability requirements and considerations that are associated with those field methods. The last section of the data or evidence gathering portion of the toolkit is How to Monitor. The summary fact sheets and detailed write-ups provide information on the field methods which are commonly used in Canada in boreal caribou monitoring programs. Summary fact sheets have been provided as one-page visual communication tools and are intended to be an overview of how to complete a particular monitoring method. Detailed write-ups, as the name suggests, provide all of the detailed information which is not contained within the fact sheets and comparative tables. Returning to the decision tree section of the toolkit, if the user now has data or originally started with data in hand, there are 3 subsections which the user may be interested in. These are modeling, analysis, and treatment of Indigenous knowledge. The modeling section of the toolkit is currently being scoped and will be expanded at a later date. The analysis section of the toolkit features any method which may be used to interpret, organize, or understand the data or evidence which arose from the field methods portion of the monitoring program. The treatment of Indigenous knowledge section of this toolkit is intended to draw on the guidance which will be contained within the practical aspects to reconciling Indigenous and non-Indigenous ways of knowing. This work is currently ongoing by the Indigenous Knowledge Circle of the National Boreal Caribou Knowledge Consortium and will be incorporated into the toolkit as soon as it is available. Now that you've been introduced to the different parts of the toolkit, check out the links below for more information.